Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. Hello, Liis.
Hi.
Hi. A great speaker again. We have Liis Narusk from Certific. She's a well-known entrepreneur and founder from the in Estonian startup ecosystem. And before giving her the stage and begin our chat, I want to give a little bit of general information. My name is Engin Kaban, and I'm the chapter director for Startup Grind Tallinn. Startup Grind is the world's largest network for entrepreneurs around the world. We have around more than 600 chapters. And next week, we have the Global Startup Grind Global Conference in San Francisco. I will be there personally. And for those who cannot make it, you can just go to startupgrind.com and join the event online, register online for free. So there are really, really great speakers for 2 days on 12th and 13th of April. So I heartily recommend you to join that. And today's event is also a special one because it is a satellite event for this conference. So some chapters took the initiative to do events so that we can present startups from our ecosystems to the global audience. And I am one of those who decided to join this initiative. And within that, before we begin our talk with Liis, I also want to introduce you to other startups from Estonia. They already sent me their video pitches, each of them 1 minute, less than 1 minute. So I will just share the screen and let's see their projects, and then we will dive right to our topic. Second. Oops. Okay.
Hi all, my name is Gultan and I am the CEO and co-founder of InSkills. InSkills is a community that first of all supports game-based learning. So we develop different types of educational board games for product managers, marketers, UX UI designers, and we actually focus on different topics, even the topics related to gender equality. Recently, we started developing our own platform where everybody can go and create their own educational board game and also play the ones that already exist on the platform. So stay tuned and follow us for more information. Thank you.
And we have one more.
I have a dream to enable access to high quality education to everybody globally. You know, one of the best ways to improve the quality of your education is to go to study in another country. Because then, in addition to academic learning, you're also getting access to cultural learning, which might add up significantly to your life experience and broaden your horizons. One of the biggest challenges for universities is to accept international students, because it creates a massive additional workload for the universities. So, as all the Estonians like to solve the world problems with the help of software, we decided to do the same. So we built DreamApply. By now, DreamApply is one of the largest of these solutions available in Europe. We are running more than 300 university systems and serving millions of users per year. So out of this small dream, we managed to build an amazing solution to help students. Thank you.
So I will leave the links of these great startup founders so you can have a look at their websites. And actually, Matt told me that they also, to help Ukraine, they also coordinated with other 15 edtech, education tech startups in Estonia, and they decided to cooperate to offer people from Ukraine for free education. So that's a great initiative as well. So we will just start, and if you have any questions during our talk, please write it in the Q&A section, and then I will direct them to Liis during or just by the end of our chat. And without further ado, I want to introduce you Liis Narusk. She was an innovation manager in banking. She was a business mentor, pitch trainer, and founder of another company before. She also volunteered for the startup ecosystem as a gala host in Estonian Startup Awards. And she has been a host in Latitude 59, the largest startup event in the Baltics, actually. And she was also a host in a Startup Grind Tallinn event in the early years. She is now the co-founder and CEO of Certific, and I will not talk about that, and I will let her talk about her company in detail. So Liis, welcome, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Hi, Engin. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I have prepared a couple of questions for you. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I want to start from a little bit your previous experience. You were working in banking earlier. So related with innovation, what kind of main differences do you see in innovation in terms of in corporate world or in the startup ecosystem? How does innovation to?
One of the age-old questions. What are the main differences? Because it seems that everybody thinks that startups and corporates are like the different ends of one scale. I don't want to think it that way. Maybe it's not that black and white, but sure, there are a few differences, and I think the biggest one and the first one that pops into my head is the mindset. And although many people in our team are with corporate backgrounds, including myself, and I owe most of my learnings and my understanding of how things could and should be done to my career back in the bank, then the overall mindset, first of all, willingness to risk, the risk appetite, the hunger is I think quite different in a startup for obvious reasons. First of all, you don't have the infrastructure in place, you don't have the resources in place. Often you don't have the people in place. You start off with an idea, you have the first follower, the second follower, then there's 5 of you, then there's more, which means that many people need to do a lot of things sometimes at the same time, not even giving any attention to the title they're bearing or why were they hired in the first place. So things just need to get done. So I think this kind of tolerance to hustle and grind through obstacles is quite different, at least in my head. And another thing, the amount of pressure, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time. I've always believed that the healthy amount of pressure helps to execute and make things happen, but the overall willingness to tolerate it is very different. Usually for people who like to work most in a maybe more still established business versus who wants to work in a startup environment. So the pace is also something that I think is oftentimes different. In the bank, when you want to go with a new product to market, you need to go through committees, you need to present your case, you need to make sure all your facts are in place before you even can do the first move. While in startup, it's often the other way around. So it's more like you push something out there, be it an MVP that you're a bit embarrassed of, and then you gather the facts by seeing how customers react. Now, I don't want to kind of also emphasize that bit too much, because being in medtech, we are more regulated than banking. We need to be extremely careful when it comes to everything related to customer data protection, and so on. But at the same time, we're still quite free in deciding, if Monday morning we decide that we want to experiment with Indian market this week, then we're free to do that. We can set up our social media posts and social media channels in a way that tomorrow it goes live. So that's kind of, I like that that kind of vibe in a startup. I mean, much more than being a bit constrained with different obstacles why something cannot be done. I hope I replied to your question.
Yes, you have replied, and you took it from very different perspectives, and it is how it is. And the first thing you mentioned was the mindset, different mindset. So also as an individual, you should be shifting your mindset then according to the environment. And related to that, actually, I want to ask you. Yeah, yes, please. Yeah.
Go ahead. I think that the connection is a bit
you
lagging.
wanted to say
so
yeah.
Yeah, no, I wanted to add that you are absolutely right, that you also need to be able to shift your mindset while in a startup and while it grows. Like the moment you join, the needs might be completely different. Then 6 months later, you need to shift again and to understand what is needed at that time for that company in that growth phase. So I think the plasticity of our brains and our minds is extremely important for me also as a founder. I think I have needed to reinvent myself several times already during the journey in Certific. So it takes a fair amount of awareness or understanding where the company is, where it's headed, what kind of leadership it needs, what kind of mindset and attitudes and skill set it needs in different periods.
I see. And in your previous company, Elevate, you were teaching or assisting, helping corporate world and telling them how to be agile, just like a startup. So trying to show them these feelings, this mindset. And I would like to ask you the thing vice versa. What can we, those in the startup world, those who are in the startups, what can we learn from them, from the corporate big players, big institutions?
As I mentioned, I have quite a few team members in Certific are from corporates, including myself, with long corporate backgrounds. Our head of operations used to be a head of compliance in a bank. Our head of finance, who we now call Duke of Wealth, used to work in a bank. So kind of these people have brought in the knowledge and expertise that I see often is lacking in startups, and that is the kind of the understanding of I would call it like quality or attention to detail. Of course, there needs to be a healthy balance between the risk appetite and getting stuff done versus also making sure that things get done to the highest level of quality, which is extremely important to us in Certific. Again, referring here to the overall kind of understanding of what we're dealing with here, healthcare, people's health. So I really like the balance we have in Certific with people who are very, very rigid and their quality standards are super high. So they don't allow the ones who maybe want to cut some corners, hustle and run to the market as fast as possible to overlook the super important details. So I think it needs, every startup and every corporate needs a healthy mix of different people with different risk tolerance levels and different understanding of how things can be done.
Right. So taking your experience, previous experience, let's move to where you are now. I don't want to introduce Certific because I always believe the founders themselves can make the best introduction because they have done it hundreds of times and they have made it a perfection most of the times. So give us a short elevator pitch maybe about Certific, please.
Which one do you want? The 30-second, the 3-minute, or the 5-minute one?
You choose. Yeah, up to you. We have time. You can.
I'll do
We have not another elevator, so
I'll do the short one then.
yeah, take your time.
Certific gives superpowers to patients by enabling them to do simple medical procedures to a medical standard, but at home, with a fraction of the time, cost, and without the need for medical personnel. And how we do it is using technology that guides and certifies correct procedures. So we identify the person, we identify what kind of medical procedure and test they are doing, and we issue them a medical result as a result of that procedure. So the end receiver of that process can be either the patient themselves. If it's, for example, in COVID testing, you need a medical certificate for traveling, then you can order that from us. Or in case of, for example, be it urinary tract infection, then maybe a GP or a hospital needs that result instead of us. So we work both ways.
Okay. So you are, as you mentioned, you are giving superpowers to the patients, and how is their feedback? How is their reaction? The patients, your users, and is there anything specific that they love about your product?
Yes, there actually is. I think one of my favorite feedback that we keep getting repeatedly. I sometimes think I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but I tend to think it's good. And what they say is after using our service that no, before using our service, they often ask, "Is this company for real? Like, can this be that simple that I actually don't have to go to a testing place? I don't have to go to a clinic. I can order the test from you, do it at home, record how I do it, and you certify the whole process, including verify my identity, and then I receive the medical certificate to my email, and that's done." So that is something
you are too good to be true.
Exactly.
Maybe
so
yeah.
And the other thing they're bringing out is like, damn, this is so obvious. Like, how come nobody has thought of this before? So again, I think we've hit the spot there.
So why do you think nobody has found it before then?
I think although I don't like to make COVID into some kind of a super character, then COVID has been speeding up healthcare in a significant way and has shown the kind of the holes or the lackings of the system in several places. One of them being medical diagnostics and the infrastructure for it. And because COVID has kind of put the rocket up to that thing in terms of innovation and what is needed, at the same time, starting a medtech startup and building it comes with so high obstacles that I think not everybody can jump those barriers. It's super regulated. It very much is dependent of the regulations. So you need to be fluent in going along or going around those strict regulations, in understanding how you can get to the market fast, while at the same time keeping the quality super high up, making sure you do comply with all the needed standards and so on. But it is hard to penetrate that market. So I think maybe that's one of the reasons why nobody else has done it before.
I see. And in relation to your explanation with COVID, how it's made things maybe faster or it increased it, I want to ask, because maybe some people, I was a bit confused in the beginning. I thought your service is, in the beginning, I thought it is for COVID, but it is for COVID, but of course, not only for COVID. So please explain a little bit about this, and how does this position you among your competitors, maybe who are only focusing on COVID, and hopefully COVID will end one day. And so what is your strategy in this?
We didn't start Certific with David and Jack, my co-founders, David Hindrikus and Dr. Jack Reindler, to kind of solve COVID or do COVID testing. COVID was one of the, again, maybe sorry for the bad use of words, but like inspiration to understand how we could disrupt medical diagnostics and what is the underlying problem we could solve, which is then to bring the overall concept of medical diagnostics into 21st century by enabling people to do more of the simpler procedures and tests at home. And we only kind of used COVID to build our technology processes platform to prove the first use case and be able to scale from there and be able to adapt to other testing modalities. And by other business lines or testing modalities, we mean that actually it's endless. One of the first use cases we are about to launch soon, that is then non-COVID related, is urinary tract infection testing at home. And if you think about it, or I think a lot of female patients understand it a bit maybe better than male patients, because it mostly concerns female patients. Urinary tract infection is oftentimes recurring and it needs antibiotics. How it works today is that you need to write to your doctors after first symptoms. You need to write to your doctor that you need a prescription. The doctor probably has an appointment available, if lucky, next day, if not in a couple of days. By that time, you're already dying of pain. It's really painful as a disease. And how it should be, it's that you can order the test to your house within hours. You can do the test. You can certify basically by uploading the test result that you have taken the test, that has been done correctly, in a sense that the right test has been used. We can issue a certificate and a prescription as a result, and the medication reaches your house also within hours. So kind of we want to squeeze the overall medical procedure timeline into, think of it like Bolt food or Volt. So if I can order food to my house within an hour, then certain simpler medical procedures shouldn't take me more than hour or two. This is kind of the benchmark we're looking at. UTI is just one example of what we call like test to treat use cases. There are tens and tens of other similar use cases that can be disrupted the same way, basically by removing the doctor from the equation at all, and therefore also releasing doctors' resources from the equation, because then they can take care of patients that need maybe more medical attendance. Another area that could benefit greatly from doing the kind of remote swabbing and remote sample collection is genetic testing. If you imagine how saliva-based genetic testing is currently done, or if any of you has done it, it's either you spit in a tube or you swab your mouth in a similar way that you today swab your nostrils or throat for COVID testing. So all the national genomics programs, who usually cost a lot for the government to recruit patients because they need to ask them to go somewhere to be tested, Instead, you can send the kit to people's home, and we can make sure that everything has been done correctly, and just kit or the sample needs to be then shipped to the lab. Another area is clinical trials, and that is something where COVID has changed a lot the landscape, because when the pandemic hit, then a lot of clinical trials were put on hold for the same reason that people can't go to clinics which are already overburdened by COVID patients, or they can't go places to show that either they do the test correctly, they take the medication correctly. Decentralized clinical trials is the term used for everything that patients can do at home, and their Certific fits like a glove in a hand perfectly into the equation. So, and I can go on and on. There are other areas in medical diagnostics where we can make a huge difference.
I see. So now we can understand that the areas where you can apply is limitless, and the logic stays the same. So you help patients to
exactly. Think of certification, like certification is needed everywhere where you need to apply clinical medical standard, where, for example, a patient needs a prescription or some kind of care or diagnosis after the test taking. So I mentioned genetic testing. If you think of simple kind of, we call them like lifestyle tests, to, for example, test if I have certain type of food intolerance or even ancestry, to understand who are my ancestors, then these are the areas where people are very self-motivated to get the results, to do everything correctly. And so far, our research and kind of discussions with several key players in the field have shown that it may not be the area where a certificate is needed, but the moment you go into oncology, the moment you go into further treatment and further diagnosis, so you need to build the whole process on top of the test. That's where a certificate becomes really relevant.
I see. And I want to ask, since we talked about COVID, I want to ask, how has this past 2 years been for certificate in terms of, I want to see from two different angles. One, product, your service wise. So because COVID has been evolving, so I guess your service did as well. How was this process? And two, I'm wondering how you manage the team, like remote working and all these things. So can you explain briefly?
Yes. So we treat COVID a bit like a special kid in Certific, in a sense that pandemic is not like a normal environment for doing business, right? It's kind of everything is pushed into extremes. Governments change regulations overnight based on the numbers that they see, where are the trends going with the disease. So it has always been for us challenging, but at the same time a very good exercise in building our muscles to be able to adapt very fast to different needs, regulatory needs, environmental needs. So we have changed our product launch within 24 hours, for example, in UK, because we realized that, or actually some kind of a regulation changed, and we couldn't launch the product in the format that we wanted. But we didn't want to give up either. So within 24 hours, we changed everything. We rebriefed the journalists. We had our PR campaign prepped, and we changed all of the text in our website. So we kind of completely redid it all. So in that sense, I think it's been a roller coaster, but very, very educating and resilience building. So and when it comes to the team, then I have to be super proud, because I think we have everybody working in Certific is quite self-sufficient and resilient in a way that people have started and joined Certific by only working from home, not being able to meet, and we have gotten everything done. So I'm very used to working remotely. I started Certific back in 2020 spring with first ideas already. I had never met Taavet. I had never met Jack. Yes, I had kind of seen Taavet and maybe exchanged one word, but not like officially. And we we decided to start a company, and so far it's been really great. So I think this remote first mindset and doing things during the pandemic is kind of you start it the hard way, and then hopefully it gets a bit easier. But it has certainly built resilience.
So team is always considered one of the, if not the most important aspect of startups, especially in the early phases and also later on. And I know you have a great team. So can you please talk a little bit about the other founders maybe? And what brought you under this idea? How did you come together and decided to start this project, the idea?
So Estonian startup community is quite small, and everybody knows everybody. And in the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I think it was a Slack group where Estonian founders tried to understand. Okay, everybody went into lockdown. What can we do? How can we help? Maybe what can technology do? What can our skill sets do to help? And I think we started chatting. I think it was Ragnar Sass who invited me into a group where there was Taavet, and then we went from there, exploring the idea of how can we get people moving in a lockdown? How can we make sure that people who have had COVID or in the future who are tested or who will get the vaccine can kind of use the services again, go to a restaurant, go to movies, and so on, go to work. And we launched what was back then, I think it was world's first immunity passport, like the COVID passport that everybody knows today. And back then, of course, everybody told us that, it's never going to fly, it's too divisive for the society, and it's not going to work. But we always knew that we're going to build it into a kind of bigger concept, and this is just kind of the first MVP or first bird out of the nest. And but back then we actually functioned as an NGO, and then I think it was May. We had our first learnings, and then Taavet knew Dr. Jack Reindler, who is our third co-founder now, from London, and Jack, being a visionary and tech entrepreneur slash physician with a very unique skill set, he had a much broader understanding of how this kind of first of all access management back then, but which evolved then into a how can we solve the medical diagnostics problem as such? And we got together, we discussed it, and then we realized that us three, we have a unique combination of skill sets that maybe can be put into further use of the humanity. So and we started Certific in 2020 September, because we saw that, okay, we can think of this NGO as a nice thing, but if we want to give it the proper go, we need to give it the proper go, and that's how it started.
Okay, I remember in the very beginning of pandemic, Estonia has always been like a pioneer in the world with these ideas, with, as you mentioned, immunity passport and several other things. That was exciting moments, and you were part of it basically.
Yeah, I think everybody was. It was such a weird time. I think there was like, I don't know, 10 COVID cases in Estonia, and everybody was in a lockdown. Everything was in lockdown, and nobody understood what's happening and what can be done, and how will it ever end, or how can we get out of this. And I think work and focusing on a solution kept us sane also. Kind of like we focused on seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and trying to understand how we can help.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about trust. Like any company, especially those for consumer products, B2C companies, they have to obviously deliver trust to their users. And for your case, it is for both parts. You need to deliver trust to users who will use it and also the institutions you are working with. So how do you manage this? How do they trust you? Why do they trust you?
Great question. Yes, I think all the companies operating in today's world are trust companies. Like you can't operate without trust. But especially in medtech and in healthcare, to enable to do at-home testing, to allow at-home testing to clinical standards, medical standards. You need to operate pretty much like a medical lab, to the standards of MedLab, but not just basically we cannot be just a startup. We cannot think of our customers as customers, but we need to think of them as patients, which kind of brings the whole game into a completely different ballpark. You need to apply the standards, the scrutiny, and the patient care that is needed. You need to apply for different ISO standards. In UK, we are UCAS accredited, which is UK accreditation service, basically for COVID testing. So you basically operate to ISO standards without yet having an ISO standard as a young startup. But your processes and your quality assurance standards need to be on a very high level. We also have kept everything related to data privacy and patient data to extremely kind of high level, or we have regarded this as high importance from the very beginning, because one misstep there and our business is basically over. So we understand very well how good we need to be at it, and we've lived and breathed GDPR from day one. And we are, I don't know, doing regular penetration testing to our system when it comes to cybersecurity, and we are also applying for CE mark to become a medical device. So this all might make us maybe a bit slower, but at the same time, we know that will give us all of those things will give us an edge going forward in a good way. Because as I mentioned, not all startups can afford to go through these processes and don't have the grit to go through these processes. So we believe that doing those things helps us to be better as a company and offer higher levels of trust and better patient care.
Nice. And how is your position among your competitors in this very specific niche? Not so much geographically, but other companies who are doing home testing or an area that you are planning to?
Yeah, so far we haven't found direct competitors, and of course there are companies doing at-home testing, but we are the only ones currently solving the trust and certification bit of it, basically enabling patient verification remotely, enabling trusted testing remotely in a way that you know that the patient is the patient, the test is the test, it has been done correctly to high medical standards, and therefore the result can be trusted. So far, I haven't seen that anybody else has cracked that equation.
So that's a good thing, or do you think it's a bad thing? What do you think? Because we have to take it from a different angle, no?
Yeah, it's good and bad. I think it's given what COVID has shown, where the world of kind of medical testing and diagnostics is moving. Given a bigger trend that was already present before, the aging population, lack of doctors, you can't solve the issue of lack of medical care and doctors by applying another telemedicine solution and asking for doctors to sit at the other end. You need to think like 3 steps ahead and think in a way that how can we remove the doctor from the equation? Not that I don't want doctors to be there or treat me, but because we need doctors to deal with much more kind of critical and complex issues, and the less complex ones that are more straightforward can be done by patients themselves with the help of technology.
I see. So let's move a little bit from Certific, but more to you as an individual entrepreneur, founder. You have worked in different industries, and how is it to be industry agnostic, and how do you adapt yourself to different areas, and how is the learning for you? Because you have to learn and act very fast.
Yes, and every time somebody asks like, "What's your greatest skill?" I'm like, I don't know. Being a generalist maybe is my biggest skill, because I'm pretty good at going through big amounts of information fast, and thinking. I don't know what's the expression in English, like thinking on my feet and acting on my feet, basically on the go. Which means that I can work with big pictures, and I can also understand the details, although I don't prefer working with details. I like to work with kind of big problems and big ideas, and I especially enjoy discussing those things with different people, different partners, and making them happen. I guess that's one of my key things that I've done so far in my career. And I'm also pretty good in understanding how to get from an idea to something that is tangible. I've done that for the past 10 years with different teams and different sizes, mainly helping them to get from an idea into something that you can see or feel, even if it's a first prototype drawn on paper. I have helped my friend's company from dragging an idea out of them behind the TV, because they were asking me all sorts of weird questions, and so I practically guessed what they want to build. It was also has to do with health tech, and I think they had been thinking about it for like 2 years, and then I kind of went so far with my mentoring that I kind of laid a path in front of them, like which steps they could take in order to actually make it the reality. Made some intros, helped them to find some accelerators. They've actually been through one now, and they, as far as I know, the platform is about to go live. So I really enjoy seeing when people can make their dreams a reality. And if I can help that to happen, then it's really rewarding.
So maybe for that specific case, meeting with you, they said 1-2 years of time. If they were going so slowly, you push them.
Yeah, God knows. I hope so. But I've also heard that a few people have told me that they probably would have never started, because they didn't have the know-how, the network, the understanding of like, okay, I have this idea in my head, but where do I even start from? So and then it's the usual, the book Lean Startup. Start from MVP, draw something out, and start testing it, and talk to people, and go from there. One thing leads to another.
And how is an average day for you? Average weekday, especially. How do you balance your work and your leisure time, personal time, motivation?
Really good question. I think, as many startup founders, I've struggled with it. to understand where this kind of healthy balance could lie. And I think almost every startup founder can say yes to the statement that it almost always feels that you're not doing enough, not moving fast enough, could do more. Maybe I could just tick that one thing off my checklist before it's 11 p.m. Or, it's a constant feeling of, but I see how much can be done and I just lack the hours in my workday to get it done, right? But I think there was a moment of, I don't know what it's called, epiphany or eureka, or maybe a bit of in a sad way last December when I was snowboarding in Spain, just one day, and I realized I hadn't been snowboarding for 2 years, and first of all my skills were super rusty, and secondly I was so tired that I just I sat on the mountain, my legs being shaky, and I just felt so tired overall that I realized that if I continue this way, meaning working a lot and not having a usual routine for workout and sleep, and if I don't prioritize that, then I can't build Certific. And it was a very clear moment for me when I realized that, okay, I've been kind of active my whole life. During the summertime, I do competitive sailing, and I've been windsurfing and snowboarding, but it's all very kind of, seasonal. And it's not very routine thing that, I go to the gym, I work out, then I try to sleep 8 hours during the night and so on. And it felt like, and it always has felt like a bit of a task to take on that reprioritization of how can I put my health on the first place and everything else on the second place. It seems like almost impossible to do when you're building a startup. And then I thought, okay, if I don't do it, then in a couple of years, I don't have my health. And what do I do then? I can't build the company. I can't give anything to my team. I'm just going to be completely useless. And I contacted a personal trainer who has made a huge difference actually in my life. And he has helped me to kind of reconfigure my routine, starting from eating to exercise. And I've been now, I think, for the past 2 months, trained like 5 times a week. I get my 7.5, 8 hours of sleep, which is, I think, quite revolutionary for a lot of startup founders. But I refuse to give it up because otherwise I become dysfunctional. And the better I function during the day, and I try to somehow inject that same mindset to my team. I've been saying from the very day one of Certific that you can't work on the weekends, you can't work late hours in the evening. Of course, if something is about to go live and we're finalizing a project, everybody kind of jumps in and does what they can, but it can't be the norm. It can't be that you work 24/7, because we're in it for a ultra marathon and not for a sprint. And if people just keep basically, I don't know, overworking and failing to take care of themselves, then I don't have a team to work with. And I think that's one of the things, at least I've heard, that many startups completely ignore. They don't emphasize the necessity of taking care of oneself first, and then being able to give something to others also. So the past few months, when I've had this kind of healthy mindset in the center of everything, has made all the difference to my energy levels, first of all, and to my mindset also, because I just kind of feel generally stronger. So I guess that's, I don't know if I answered your question, but I went into this general health topic.
That is a very, very sensitive topic, the physical health, mental health of founders, and which in many cases lead to burnout. This exists, we all know it, but it is not so much talk. So because maybe people do not feel like sharing about it. So it's great that you are aware of your team and you are taking precautions about it. I wish many others founders do the same.
I hope so, because if your brain is on and like wired and lit like 24/7, it doesn't lead to good places. You need to have some other topics you can think of, or then not think of at all. There are many people who claim that they meditate and they kind of are very mindful, and I hope they are. And it's one of the things that has made a huge difference for me also. If I feel I can't get off the work thoughts track in the evening, then the easiest thing is I use the Calm app and have someone to talk me out of it. so even 20 minutes, 10 minutes in the evening, it's just it's good. I do recommend.
Right. I'm very curious, and I would like to ask you many more things, but also we need to stick with the time. I will direct you a few questions from the audience. And okay, Scout is asking, coming from a banking background, can you give a sense of how you came up with this idea and what propelled you to build this company? We kind of answered that, but do you want to add on top of your comments?
I do think I hope I answered that, with the founder's story and how we tried to figure out how we can get the economy moving again at first, and then we're kind of once digging more into in the rabbit hole of how can we solve a more underlying problem in medical diagnostics and in healthcare. Then we came up with the idea of Certific together with David and Jack. And yes, you are right. My background was in banking, but in the bank I also worked as an innovation manager and with a lot of different ideas. So I've always worked with different ideas and different concepts from different fields. And I have, for the past, I think at least 5-6 years, tried to find this one idea that would keep me engaged for longer than only the initial kind of from idea to prototype phase. And I'm happy that that Certific came about because I've always, maybe not always, but at least as long as I remember my kind of grown up career, then I've believed that there are these only 3 pillars that I personally can work in, or three areas, which I call the 3 E's: education, environment, and e-health. So I was kind of scanning around for a long time already, like in which of these can I find something that I would work for a longer time. And life gave me Certific. So.
And another question from him, has the Elizabeth Holmes case affected you with the market or at the regulatory level?
No. I think that it's funny that question keeps coming up, although I understand that Theranos's case was more to do with a medical diagnostic like hardware, less of a software, but it was supposed to be hardware. But actually, to be honest, I know the case, I've followed it, I've read about it, but I don't see many analogies, luckily. I think the overall takeaway is that maybe for startups overall, that you always need to make sure that the hype is real and the product is real, and maybe it has just pushed the overall quality to a higher level from the investor's perspective, from customers' perspective, and from employees' perspective.
Okay. And another question about mindset shifting. We also kind of answered that, but let's see. how did you, Dennis is asking, how did you adapt yourself to the different mindset when you first set up your business? What is the first thing to keep in mind?
I'm not sure if I needed to change mindset. It was more about learning the skills, or just familiarizing with the topic, with the market, relying heavily on team members, my co-founder Dr. Jack Reindler, for the medical know-how. But I've always thought that I am building Certific, and I do believe I'm building it from a patient's perspective. So in that sense, and I need to hire around me the skill sets needed that understand the medical field really well. I never pretend that I'm an expert in medical diagnostics as such, or medical devices. Of course, I know a thing or two about it, more than I knew 2 years ago. But I build Certific, and we build Certific from the perspective that what could be the best solution for the patient. And for that, I think coming from a different industry is really healthy. You have a completely kind of new set of eyes to look at, to use when you look at the field, and you can ask all those naive questions like, but why can't I order my prescription drug to my home with Wolt or Bolt Food or other delivery apps? So it's kind of like it pushes everybody to ask those weird, silly questions like, oh, seriously, like why can't I? And why do I need to go to visit the doctor's office to just maybe give a simple, I don't know, urine sample where they dip in a paper stick and tell you that you have urinary tract infection instead, when you can do that at home and it's done, like you don't need to go anywhere. So kind of these, I don't want to definitely to leave an impression that I'm kind of oversimplifying things, but it helps to ask those critical questions, and therefore maybe to push the boundaries of what can be done and how things should be done.
Okay.
I hope I answered
the final
the question
from the I think you did. Final question from the audience. Did you face with opposition from conventional medical workers or doctors? And if so, how did you handle them?
I think opposition when trying to disrupt healthcare is something that is, first of all, badly needed, secondly, expected, thirdly, we are and we always will, I think is the answer. Because I don't know if you remember when TransferWise started. It wasn't that long time ago. Then nobody believed that they're going to do something big, right? And nobody trusted the system either. And then you start building it, and then you start building the trust also. So that's how it should be done. I don't know, when internet banking came, nobody believed that you can do something like that without going to the bank's office. So it's normal with these new things that takes a bit time to understand, and then after a while, hopefully people are thinking like, how did we do it before? Why didn't we have a solution like this earlier?
Exactly. Right. Okay. Last few minutes, and I want to ask you a few very fast, rapid-fire questions. It is one of the most fun part for me. So these are questions not professional, not business related, just to have fun and in order to get to know you a little better from personal perspective. Ready?
Ready, go.
Snow or rain?
Snow.
Okay, and it is snowing.
No, now it's
tea
raining.
or coffee?
Again, coffee.
Any nickname you have had when you were a child, if you had any?
Yes. for I think starting from before high school until high school, I had red hair, like completely red, and then I had a nickname in my home village on the outskirts of Tallinn, which was Tuluke, but I think it translates into English something like small fire or something like that, because I was just the hair was so bright red that I couldn't go unnoticed.
Right. Morning person or a night owl?
Both. I love to stay up late, but I also like to wake up early.
But still, you can sleep 7.5, 8 hours. That's good.
Exactly. Sleep faster.
Okay. Favorite type of music?
Indie. I'm classical.
Indie. Okay. On a plane, window or aisle seat?
On a boat.
What?
On a boat.
On an
Not on a
airplane,
plane,
but you
on
can
a
say
boat.
on a boat. Okay, on a boat, yeah.
I prefer a boat, but other
All
than
right.
that, window.
Okay. And anything on your bucket list, but not business related?
Bucket list. Tough one. I've done skydiving. I've done sailing. I've done all sorts of weird things. This is a hard one. I never have time these days to think about anything else than bucket list related to Certific. So
Okay. That's fine.
I'd like to live in another country, in a warm one.
In a warm one, okay.
Yeah.
And something you are terrible at?
Many things. I'm terrible.
Many things.
I'm really terrible. Yes, I'm probably terrible in many things. First thing that comes into my mind is, when you have a new TV at home or new technology, I know it sounds weird. I hate the setting up process. Where you need to kind of set up all the right configurations and figure out how something kind of works. I just want it to work and fast. I'm terrible at that.
If your life would be a movie, what genre would that be?
Oh my God, where do you come up with these questions? You mean what type, what genre?
Yeah.
Probably a science fiction.
Science fiction, okay. And
yeah.
Work-related call on Sunday, answer or reject?
Oh, answer, definitely. Happens all the time.
Okay. And the last question, your undiscovered useless talent, if you have one. Something you do good, but
yes,
useless.
If I wouldn't be that great of a singer, I would be an amazing actress.
Okay.
I've always thought that I envy the careers of actors and actresses because they can play so many different parts during their lifetime and kind of experience different characters.
So maybe in the future, if you want
the singing bit was a joke.
Yeah. If you want to change your career sometime in the future, you have other things to do then.
Yes, definitely. In a sci-fi movie.
Okay. So that's it from my side. Do you want to have some final words before we wrap up?
Two things. Those of you who plan to build or start a startup or a company, doesn't need to be a startup. Not every company needs to be a startup, by the way. It can be a hair salon or a restaurant or some other cool thing. Definitely go for it, because I always like to think in a way that would I regret this if I'm 80? Or would I regret not doing this when I'm 80? And if the answer is, yes, if you would regret if you don't do it, then it's definitely worth giving it a try. And also, if you think that ideas like this, there are several ideas like this out there. There are more than several, probably millions of ideas, but the question is in the execution, and that's what matters. How do you actually make it happen? What kind of team do you build around yourself to make it happen? And so I encourage to start. And by doing it, don't work 24/7. Try to keep yourself healthy and sane also in the process.
Right, great final words. And so, Liis, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody who joined and found it. I hope you found it useful.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the audience as well for your time. And so we had Liis Narusk from Certific, CEO and founder of Certific, in today's session. So have a great day and keep with startup clienteling. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.